Well, the title is Sacrificial Love in Marriage. Certain kind of love. So it's an important topic. It's a big topic. It has many sides or many angles to it. So I'll try to be faithful. I need to close at 10 o'clock. Okay, so the other day I went over, way over, so I'll try to stay faithful to the clock. So 10 o'clock is the landing time. So we're going to take off and then fly for a while and then try to bring it down. Sacrificial love in marriage. Here's the story as I recollect it. The leaders of a committee were planning a ministers. Well, it was a, as far as I know, it was part of a church meeting where a lot of people will come together, and they were going to have a weekend, maybe a week of meetings. Anyway, so they were thinking about the topics, and they kind of had a theme that they wanted to talk about, and the theme was love. And there was one older, mature leader in the group who was a dynamic preacher. And so they thought, hey, this would be the man for the topic. Now, a little bit of background to this leader is he was dynamic, but when he would talk about love, it was kind of a certain form, and a form that didn't go down real good. And so they thought, okay, the theme is love, and so we're going to pick him, and he cannot get on this hobby horse of, it comes down hard. And so they gave him the topic and kind of gave him an outline just to keep him on track. And so he had the first topic, and first line, introduction, was, love carries a big stick. I've contemplated that, and on one side I've thought about it a certain way, and I've kind of struggled with it. But the more I thought about it, I think the brother was onto something. Now, I don't know if he had the best illustration or the best metaphor to describe it, like a stick. But I think he's onto something, and I'm going to touch on that in this topic. So think of love when we were young, okay, when we were children. Our parents gave us love in some ways. Think of love as a form of medicine when we are young in the faith. It's a medicine, in a form that's palatable, that we can handle. Okay? Think of love as an adult. So as we grow and as we mature in the faith, God gives us medicine that sometimes goes down hard. Like the pills are in forms that we kind of gag. We have a daughter. She's 15 now, and for a time, it was hard for her to get pills down. She would try different ways. So there was the applesauce method. Put it in applesauce or with applesauce and just try to get it down. And it invariably. Well, here in the last few months or so, she's learned to take it and put it way in the back, as far back as she can reach, and it almost falls down. So she's just about got it down to where it can go down without too much of a hassle. So, love, different forms at different times, especially when we think about being children in the faith. Thought about the Apostle Paul. He actually talks about growing up and maturing in the faith. And the medicine that God gives us as we mature, sometimes it goes down hard. The Hebrew writer has the same idea. Discipline may seem hard. One other thing to think about when we talk about this topic is context. So, how many of you are familiar with the phrase context rules? Context rules. Have you ever heard that? Okay, a little bit. Okay, context rules means when you do Bible study, okay, that you read a passage in its context. So taking it out of context is taking a verse, pulling it out, and making it mean something that it didn't mean in that context. So when you think about words, when words are said, they're usually said in a context. So that's the idea. So context rules. So here's the idea, too, of love can have many different meanings, many different connotations. And so when we talk about love, we want to think about, when we talk about love, what are we actually talking about? And so in this topic, what I'd like to do is kind of look at different kinds of love and then talk about sacrificial love and how to apply it, especially in very hard places. So here we go. What is love? First, there's familial love or family love. Family love has to do with biological connection between family members. And there's many accounts in the Bible where you have that. One that I thought about in Genesis 29 is Jacob and Laban. So Jacob ran in trouble at home, and so his mom and dad sent him off to Uncle Laban. Jacob went, and when he came to Uncle Laban, it is actually interesting to read the account when he got there. How he saw some people that didn't know him, he didn't know them, but as soon as Rachel came on the scene, which was a relative, he did some amazing things. Remember, they brought the sheep together and they had to, maybe there had enough people, had to be around, enough men to actually lift the stone off of the well so that the sheep could be watered. Well, there was something about Jacob. You know, he said, hey, bring the sheep. They said, well, we can't. We've got to wait till all the sheep are here, and then we remove the stone, and then we give the sheep water. Well, when Rachel showed up, he single-handedly moved that thing off. When he saw her, he ran to her, kissed her, and then cried out and started crying. Now that's a little strange. But you have to remember, he's been by himself for a little bit of time. He's been traveling. He's been by himself. He had an amazing dream where he saw this ladder going up and down, angels ascending and descending. Okay, and he comes to his uncle, and here's some relative. And he sees her, and he kind of falls apart. This is kind of an emotional experience for Jacob. Familial means you have deep affection and feelings for one another in a family. So you've heard the saying, blood runs thicker than water. That's the idea. Family, sometimes. Family connections run deep. So that's familial love. In a spiritual sense, there's the same idea. There's spiritual connections in the new covenant sense between believers and Christians, like as Christians. It runs deep. So terms like brother and sister in the New Testament designate this sense. When Paul instructed Timothy how he should relate to different people in the church, he used this spiritual family designation. Here's what he said. Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father. Younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity. Now, he had a family sense. Not all family has that understanding. But I'm saying from a biblical understanding, spiritual family is important. So this is this familial love idea. So in the family of God, we treat each other as brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, kind of relationship like that. So that's familial love. That's one kind of love. Then there's friendship love. Think of Jonathan and David as a prime example of friendship love. In friendship love, you have often friends have many things in common. They share many things with each other, and they connect on many different areas. There's an emotional affection. Often there's connections, emotional connections. There's a transparency, and that can be same gender, it can be cross-gender, and I'm not talking about necessarily about the romantic or the sexual. I'm saying people can have good friendships. I realize you have to be careful when you go cross-gender, but you can have deep connections with men and women of the same gender. In friendship love, people make many sacrifices, and they're willing to make sacrifices. They take risks one for the other. You see that with David and Jonathan. In a friendship love, you have people that are committed. They're loyal to each other. That's a certain kind of love. One other thing to note in each of these as I describe them, there's likely overlap in each of these. They don't stand separately, but they overlap with each other. So friendship love. The third kind is romantic love. Here's a few examples. The Bible says that Jacob loved Rachel. From a biblical perspective, Rachel was a knockout. Do you know what a knockout is? Like, she was an attractive woman. In contrast to her sister, how the Bible says it is a little bit unique. At least how some commentators say it. So it says she was weak of eyes. Okay, that's kind of a nice way of saying that she wasn't really too much to look at. In contrast to Rachel, think about Jacob. It says he worked 7 years, and it seemed but a few days. Guys, how many of you waited 7 years and worked 7 years for your bride? Give me a hand. Raise your hand. 7 years, that's a long time. Okay, there was something about Jacob and Rachel, especially him toward her. He loved her. I think that was romantic love. And when he got gypped, he had to work another 7 years. He got her the next week, but he had to work another 7 years. That was the deal. That was a long 7 years. It says about Saul's daughter, Michal, she loved David. You don't have too many accounts in the scripture where it says somebody loved somebody in that way, like a romantic love. There's a few occasions. This is one of them. I think it is. Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David. Now it waned and it went down the tube after a while, but it started out this way. It says about Solomon, Solomon loved many strange or heathen women. Now that can be in a few different senses, but I think it was this one sense for sure, romantic. He was attracted to other women. He liked beautiful women. And I think it had to do with this romantic aspect, at least that romantic aspect. I can't fathom more than one wife. Okay? Like, just realistically. Hundreds of wives. That, in my mind, that's lunacy. Like, you got to be off. Even a second wife, or third or fourth. But that's extreme. But Solomon was extreme in ways. So, romantic love. Then there's this sexual love. So today, here's how it works out. For many people, love and sex are synonymous. Love and sex are synonymous. That is not a biblical idea. So in this sense, those two being synonymous, it goes like this. If you love me, you will consent to sex. If sex is not an option, you must not love me. Love is measured by the frequency of sex. You see how that kind of is problematic? Or sometimes love is measured by the kinkiness, like think of deviancy or twisted or far out practices of sex. From God's perspective, outside of marriage, the act of sex is sinful. It's only within the confines of marriage that it is appropriate. So outside of marriage, romantic feelings don't justify it. Friendship doesn't justify it. Hey, we're friends. We consented. It's mutual consent. Well, that's not abuse, but it doesn't pass the test that God gave. Sexual desire or lust doesn't justify it. Shechem is an example. He raped Jacob's daughter, Dinah. Amnon is another example. When love gets out of control, it becomes lust. It's self-serving. Revenge doesn't justify it either. Tamar with Judah, her father-in-law. In the realm of marriage, the act of sex is permissible and to be mutually enjoyed. Okay? But it's right and good in the context of marriage if it's mutually agreed to and enjoyed. I realize sometimes men or women have biological, physical problems that they don't necessarily enjoy it. I get that. And that's possible that some people don't enjoy it. They can't get there. Okay? So they can serve their spouse. That is appropriate. So in marriage, the act of sex is permissible and to be mutually enjoyed, but it is sinful if it is forced. It violates and uses a person made in God's image. So it should never be forced. Force it on someone else. It is sinful if manipulation is involved. Like if you use emotional arm twisting to get your spouse to engage in sexual relations. If you use manipulation, your spouse becomes an object. It becomes a thing that you use. He or she becomes a thing that you use, kind of like a machine, kind of like a tire or a vehicle to get from point A to point B. That's not what it's designed for. It is sinful if it is self-serving. By self-serving, I mean when it pleases simply you. It's primarily about you and no consideration for your spouse, or very little consideration for your spouse. It's mostly about you, what it does for you. Or for me. So likely some of these things have caught us. They catch me. In this last one, guilty. But there's mercy when you repent, when you own it. Sexual love. And then there's sacrificial love. Sacrificial love. What is sacrificial love? Well, as the word says, sacrificial love, self-sacrifice, where you sacrifice yourself. So Webster says, self-sacrifice of oneself or one's interest for others or for a cause or ideal. So again, the act of offering yourself or something of yourself of which there is no substitute. So in Romans 12:1, this is a good example. Paul appeals to the Roman believers, and he says, I beseech you therefore, that's an appeal, I beseech you therefore by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. I think there's more to it. Okay? If you can picture, he's drawing from the Old Testament sacrificial system, where an animal was brought to the temple, the priest would butcher it and do whatever it needed to do, and then it would be put on the sacrifice. Okay, that's a form of what he's appealing to, that believers should give their bodies to God as a living sacrifice. Okay, that was a dead sacrifice. You are a living sacrifice. It's one thing to lay down your life for someone. It's another to live for the good of someone else. So Paul appeals to the Roman believers, and he bases that appeal on the first 11 chapters that show and where he explains God's grace to them. So when you love another person, when you love your spouse, you imitate God by giving them a taste of grace and by extending mercy instead of judgment. So in a sense, you take on what God has shown to you and you demonstrate it to someone else. The apostle of love says it this way, no man hath seen God at any time. If we love one another, God dwelleth in us, and his love is perfected in us. So Dave mentioned something yesterday, and here's the idea. Okay? God is invisible. God's love becomes visible through you and me. Now that's an amazing reality. That the invisible God, who was never seen in all his glory by someone, and that person lived. Okay? God is made visible through you and me. Imperfectly, don't kid yourself. But one aspect of God, and that is his grace and his love, to degrees. So the invisible God of love is made visible through you and me loving. In the Apostle John's epistle, love is one of the characteristics of a genuine believer. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light. So light and love and truth are key characteristics of believers. And believing husbands and wives should live that out. So sacrifice, self-sacrifice. Love. Love is part of this self-sacrifice. Love is an act of self-sacrifice. I have a coin. Okay? Think of this coin as the coin of self-sacrifice. The head side of the coin is self-denial. The tail side is love. It's just two sides of the same coin. That's the idea. So when you love, in a sense, you die to yourself. When you die to yourself, you, in a sense, love somebody. It's just emphasizing two different things. So here's ways that the Bible often talks about how we love. Speak the truth in love. Ephesians 4:15. The other morning, I was flossing my teeth. And I was doing it in the presence of my wife. She was about, maybe 6, 7 feet away. And she was reading, and I was flossing my teeth. And she kind of looked at me, and I looked at her, and doing my thing. And she says, after a little bit, she says, this is very irritating. I got the message. She spoke the truth in love. The Bible says, walk in love. So speak the truth in love, walk in love. That means your life is characterized by love. Will you sometimes stumble and fall? Yes, you will. If you walk in love and you never stumble and fall, then Jesus had no purpose for coming. You don't need Jesus. So if you find yourself falling and falling often, it just reminds you, I need more of Jesus. I need more of Jesus. I need more of Jesus. So walk in love. Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ has loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Another passage, Colossians 3, talks about putting on love as clothing. Clothe yourselves with love. Above all these things, the things that he's mentioned, he says, put on love. That's like putting on clothes. So when you get dressed in the morning, think about that. Put clothes on, think of love. I'm getting dressed to love today. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. Different ones have talked about it. I'm not going to go into it. It describes love. So, shifting gears a little bit. 3 expressions of self-sacrificial love. Just 3. There's many more. I'll just give a few examples. 3 ways. Obviously, the first way you can love is to say yes. That's one expression of love, is yes. Yes, yes. So, in a healthy, growing marriage, yes is the most common response. Not without struggle, to yield to God, to give up what you want, but what is best for everyone involved, for the long-term good, especially of your spouse, in the context of marriage. So here's what it would look like for a husband toward his wife. To say yes. When my wife wants to do something that is right or permissible, I can say yes. When my wife comes up with the idea, okay, when she comes up with the idea of what to do, yes. See, I don't always have to come up with the idea. When it costs more than I anticipated, yes. Some of us men, maybe ladies too, I don't know as much, I just know men, we like to hold on to this thing. It's tangible, and I can see it going out the door. I can see it in Walmart coming to our house. I'm referencing what Dave said yesterday. My wife never brings that much stuff. When it takes longer than I planned, yes. Self-sacrifice. Yes, I'll put myself into this. I didn't think it would take this long, but shopping, especially clothes shopping. When I go shopping, I go to the store and I know what I want. I don't do a lot of looking around. If it fits and it looks all right, that's good enough for me. When my wife goes shopping, or when I go shopping with her, it's a different story. We don't do a lot of shopping together. Yes to my wife when it takes me out of my comfort zone. I don't feel like doing that. I'm not comfortable doing that. Well, just because I'm not comfortable doesn't mean we can't do it. If you feel comfortable doing it, yeah, let's try that. When it makes her life less stressful, yes. It maybe makes my life more stressful, but less stressful for her. So you can say yes to those. When it requires me to get up earlier, okay, this one is hard, or stay up later. I've threatened already to, hey, I've told this to myself. Okay, if Lucy wants to talk, you know that if you stay in bed, you're likely going to fall asleep. So what you'll have to do is either get out of bed, stand, or kneel. Because that way you will not fall asleep. So, yes, if it requires me to get up earlier, stay up later. When it involves more one-on-one time with my wife, yes. And for some of you, that may be hard, but that's self-sacrifice for a wife. Now my computer doesn't want to work. Well, let me go by memory. When my husband wants to share a new idea, hear him out. Hear him out, even if it's real far out. Like, man, this is going way out of where I feel comfortable. Oh, not another one. But we lost so much on the last time. But you said it. Yes, let me hear it. Verbalize it. Get it out of you. For a wife, she can say yes when her feelings or her butterflies are not all flying in formation. A wife can say yes, even if I'm uncertain or I'm somewhat afraid. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out before you can say yes. There are times when you can do that. It requires self-sacrifice. There can be times, too, when you can say yes when it doesn't all make sense to you. Okay, keep in mind, those things need to be balanced with other things. But I would say, yes, you can say yes 1,000 times in many different ways. That's in a healthy marriage. Okay, we're going to go into some areas where it's not quite like that, where you have to do some thinking, and you have to do some grown-up thinking, like adult thinking, like mature thinking. Here are some of those. Saying no. So here's some qualifiers. Saying no should be weighed carefully, especially if time allows. Sometimes you don't have the time to think through everything. So take time to think it through if you have the time, because saying no can have many serious implications. Saying yes has also some implications, but no especially. Sometimes you have to make decisions in real time, like fast. Therefore, pray and act in wisdom and love. The other thing is, if you say no, consider how you say it, like your tone of voice. You can say it many different ways. No. Dear, I would rather not do that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. No. So consider how you say it, your tone, your attitude, your body language. Consider when you say it, like the timing of when you say no. Consider your spouse when you say that. And consider where you do it, like if you're by yourself or if you're in the presence of someone else. Those are important things to keep in mind. So the timing, the tone, and the place. So here's the idea. Saying no is comparable to giving or taking medicine for grown-ups. The Apostle Paul says in Ephesians 4:13, where he talks about equipping the church He gave gifts to equip the church so that the church grows up, the persons in the church, they grow up and they mature. They go from being children to adults. Okay, this is grown-up medicine. Here's times when you can say no. When I'm asked to do something that is sinful, you can say no. Saying no when you're asked to do what is sinful is a form of self-sacrifice. I love God more than. God's word says, X, therefore, we ought to obey God rather than man. Sometimes your spouse has to do that. Sometimes you have to do that, to say no. When you're asked to do what violates conscience, conscience is your inner sense of what is right and wrong. A person is most often aware of conscience when he or she senses they've done wrong or contemplate doing what they deem as wrong. So it's your internal, kind of like an internal thermostat that goes into the red zone. And it's like saying, hold it, you've either done wrong or you're heading toward doing something wrong. Often your conscience doesn't say much when you're doing the right thing. It's just normal temperature. You're not even aware that it's there. But it's there. Don't kid yourself. Conscience is a complex topic. So don't misunderstand me. It is not easy to say yes, no. Especially if your conscience is at work. And it is at work. So it's a complex issue when we're talking about conscience. Some people are sincere, but biblically uninformed about conscience. So their conscience is basically what they've grown up with, and that's their standard. And that's okay for a time. But there's a time where you have to grow up conscience-wise and be informed biblically. That takes time. Some people are sincere in conscience, but very controlling. Some people are sincere, biblically uninformed, and controlling. So you understand how it's different layers going on here? It's not always easy to sort through. It is complex. Nevertheless, when it comes to conscience, if you're asked to violate your conscience, you can say no. When you're asked to do something that is illegal or complicit to a crime. Complicit to a crime means that you knew it and you helped cover it up. I realize there's many things that are termed illegal, okay, that are legal, but are actually ethically crossing the line. They're morally wrong, even though they're legal. But I'm saying in the law of the land, legal sense. So when you're asked to do something that is illegal or complicit to a crime, like falsifying documents, you should say no. Covering up a criminal act or activity. If you're asked to do that, to say, hey, don't say anything, you're not allowed to say anything, don't tell anyone, you can say no. You can say no when you're asked to do various forms of lying. Things like knowingly withholding information that someone should know. That is, agreeing to tell some, like among yourself, agreeing to, we'll only tell them this much. You remember the Ananias and Sapphira story? It could be fatal. I remember one couple coming, and the lady told me later. They came and they had this agreement. There are certain areas of their marriage that they would not talk about. Later, the marriage fell apart. I interacted with the lady, and she said, one of the things we had decided on the way there were certain things we weren't going to talk about. It's not wise to do that. Don't commit yourself to things like that. You can say no when the risk factor of danger is too great. Too great. For example, when the person puts others at risk, and when I say risk, I mean risk to harm or injure or kill. Sometimes those are hard decisions. So, driving while intoxicated. When a person is mentally or physically impaired, they want you to participate or they tell you to do something. Self-sacrifice says, I love you too much to go along with that. When the person puts himself or herself in danger, so it's not just to put others in danger, they put themselves in danger, then it's appropriate to act. You can say either no, or you should call for help. So, when a person might self-harm, you should act. You should not participate. You can say no, and you can call the police, call the ambulance, call 911. Another occasion would be like that is when a person that is in that state, not just that they go for a ride, but they ask you to go with them, like they are suicidal or they are very angry. You can say no. If the risk is too great, if you deem it is such, you can say no. I remember a couple was here at a seminar about 2-3 years ago. They were here for this kind of seminar. On the way home after the first session, the husband got so irate that he ripped the lady's covering off. She said, if you don't stop here, I'll call the police. And they were driving. And he kept driving, so she called the police. And I think the police talked to him and told him, hey, whatever he told her. So there are times where it calls for a hard decision. Third one, depends. Depends. This refers to when certain conditions are met. Here's an example. I've had meetings with couples where they were so estranged that they could not talk. And so to try to get a sense for where they actually struggle when they're together, okay, is ask, would you be willing to jot down 3 areas that you've struggled with, that you've been in conflict with each other in the last 2 weeks? Each of you write down 3. Just jot them down. Now, out of those 3, could you pick one to share with me here, and it stays here? You do not talk about it outside of here. Okay. I had a couple do that, and no sooner had they left from here and gone to where they were staying, and the husband brought it up to his wife. That's a violation. So some things are yes, no, depends. So it depends. If you or I or we can maintain self-control, we can talk. If we cannot commit to that, we don't talk. We don't talk without a third party present. It's just too destructive. Sometimes when couples try to talk about something, it is like this. For some, okay, here's how it goes sometimes. Let's go to the bedroom. That means let's go to a private place where we're away from the children or from other people. And we tend to think, let's go to the bedroom to talk. Okay, and in your and my mind, it might mean this is a private conversation. We just need to go alone and talk. Well, for some people, that's traumatic. Here's why. Some people have told me when they go to the bedroom, for some it means this is either going to be a sermon, a lecture, a courtroom type of cross-examination, or a verbal crucifixion. These are experiences. People have told me that this can last from 15 minutes to half an hour to 1 hour to up to 2 hours. Here's another time where it depends. If you forsake all others and keep yourself only for me, then if you cannot commit to that, that's what it depends on. It depends if you get a STD, a clear STD test. It depends on that. Those are hard decisions. We'll talk if a third party is present. If we can't meet that condition, we won't talk because it is just destructive. So some marriages are strong, thriving, struggling, yes. Stumbling, falling, yes. Everyone sins in some form or other. But some marriages are way over here, and they are broken. They might be together, but they are internally broken. So these are some helps in navigating if you're over here. This size of crowd, I don't know. It's possible there's a few that are over here. I can't read crowds. I don't read crowds. I like to interact personally with people. I don't like to make assumptions. So it's best to interact with the people and find out where the people are at. So I said I'd bring this plane down at 10 o'clock. It's past. So self-sacrificial love. It is medicine for grown-ups, husbands and wives who are maturing in the faith of Christ, learning to love like Christ, willing to lay down our lives for His sake and His kingdom. Now again, some of that is hard medicine. But I think you're a mature group of people. You can handle it. Now God give you grace and give you wisdom how to practically do that. Thank you for your time.